Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to sharing with you our guest. Welcome to another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and I've got a really cool guest, somebody that I've known for a long time, Joseph Mooney from St. Louis. So, Joe, can you give our audience a little bit of a background on who you are?
Yeah, my name is Joe Mooney. I have owned my company, Tended Cellars, wine collection services for almost 5 years now. Started in April 2018. I do private wine cellar consulting work for home collectors, and that is everything from finding wine for them, cleaning up existing inventory, logistics of moving between homes or into a new cellar, or eliminating some inventory out of their collections. Literally any piece of the wine collection world I can help. I've got a network of retailers and professionals and restaurateurs and other people in the industry, coast to coast. I've been doing this kind of work for about, I guess, coming up on 10 years now. And 10 years, no, 15 years now. And so yeah, like over that time, just working with a bunch of professionals in the industry, you just make friends, you get to know people, and that's what I do well anyway. I get to know people. Coming from a background in the service industry, that's what I'm good at, is good at talking to people and making connections. And I mean, anybody who's watching this from St. Louis knows that in St. Louis, it's all about the network. It's all about who you know, not as heavily on what you know. I mean, it's all about making those connections in town. And you don't call for a plumber cold in St. Louis. You ask for a referral.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack with that. And I want to just say out loud again, this channel, it's all about the everyday person building wealth, getting ahead. And it's harder and harder these days than it ever has been with the cost of living going up. And then coming out of COVID, you got people that have been starting their businesses and working remotely and doing things, just doing all kinds of creative things to be able to survive, especially coming through 2020, 21 with the lockdowns or whatnot. And, we're talking to somebody about saving money. So this is the quick piece of info on the savings equation. The savings equation is very simple. It's income minus your expenses equals your savings. And all kinds of content out there about cutting your expenses and meal prep and doing a budget. But at the end of the day, you spend enough time on that, it's not going to make you wealthy, right? So what's the other part of that equation that you can also control? Well, income. And you can increase income? In some regards, yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked so much on this channel about, building something outside of yourself. Are you building someone else's business, someone else's dream, someone else's wealth, or are you going to be building yours? And so many people have found a passion, or, follow the passion to do something on the side and then ramp it up. And at some point in time, be able to turn it into a full-time job, a full-time business. And that's kind of what you've done.
That's exactly how I started. Prior to this, I was working a job that I really loved, with a group of people that I enjoyed working with. But it was in the brewing industry, and people get into the brewing industry because they love it, not because they expect they're going to make $1 million. So it was just one of those things that I was presented with the opportunity to get back into the wine cellar consulting world from a prior client. And so it started as exactly what you're saying, a supplemental income, the Gen Z millennial move of everybody's got a side hustle to make ends meet. That was purely what this started as. It was just a side hustle, doing something I knew I liked to do and I knew I was good at doing. And, kind of as you mentioned, with the pandemic shutting everything down, service industry jobs, brewing jobs, all of those, in my own perspective, gave me the opportunity to say, well, I guess I've got nothing but time now to try to make this a real thing. I mean, the only limitations on my business at that point were me. And so I decided to go ahead and just start putting some infrastructural pieces into place and try to make it a legit business.
So, I want to take this and kind of go backwards in time in just a second and start kind of from the beginning of how you got into the service world and your journey along there. And then we were recently talking about, because you were working at Civil Life when the pandemic hit,
Civil Life Brewery,
working at the brewery, and talking about the unemployment benefits being so high at that point in time that it was, there wasn't an incentive to try to find another
Yeah.
job at that point
As
in time,
we
right?
all knew, in small markets like St. Louis, where the cost of living is so much lower than it is nationally, the national unemployment rate was, I mean, it was higher than we were potential. Many people in the service industry. I can't say all. I don't want to speak to anyone's pay structure, but a lot of people in the service industry on unemployment were making more money than they were at work. Um, and so yes, it's a disincentive. It disincentivizes you to go out and try to find something. But also, if you're somebody like probably yourself and myself, where sitting on our hands just leads to like uselessness and fidgeting and like I couldn't do it for long enough without diving into a pit of despair and misery.
Doing something
So I had to
constructive.
do something, and whether it was helping a buddy out doing some building work or whatever, I needed to get myself up off the couch and doing something bit, practical. And I already had this business moving. I already had an LLC started. So it just it made nothing but sense for me to start looking at building a website finally, to start finally get, you know, a server up and running and business cards printed, and, like those little pieces that when it's a side job and it's bringing in a couple extra bucks aren't as functional or necessary. It's because it's your second priority to your main job, which all of a sudden the main job being gone, it was convenient for me to make that my main thing. And that's all it really took to make it self-sustaining and functional. Um, so I mean, a lot of people talk about from two different perspectives of starting a business. With a friend of mine who started one suffers, I guess suffers is maybe not the right term, but from like what's the term? It's like imposter syndrome because he felt like it was so easy to get into. And other people talk about overcoming massive hurdles and struggles to make their thing grow and start and all that kind of thing. I would say I was probably closer to the imposter syndrome set of things where I'd already kind of set myself up to see opportunities and take them as they came. And so it wasn't hard for me to step back into this. It's something I knew well. It's a client base that I already knew very well. It was a market that I had been very comfortable in prior to now. So it was easier for me to get in, and almost personally shamefully easy, if you will.
Well, you hear the word, make your own luck kind of a thing, opportunity, meets preparation, and you've done a lot of work, and, naturally, whether you knew it or not, you were preparing for this,
Yeah.
along the way with all the hard work you've been doing and the connections. And you mentioned last time we spoke about connections and you're leveraging your network being a really important part of this. But for the listeners out there, what I want to do is just kind of take this kind of timeline from earlier on in your journey.
Yep.
And kind of how that led to you, because you think a little bit differently than the normal person. You're not that 9 to 5 clock in, clock out
Yeah, I could
type of person, right? And there's a ton of people that are similar out there. So where do you want to take the listeners to? Where do you want to start with?
I am where I am because of hardships that I guess I took on pretty far back in my own personal history. Like you said, in college was setting myself up for a middle management office desk jockey job, doing a business administration and marketing degree and getting by in college. But I found myself my junior year finding that I hated all the classes that I was taking in my business degree. I was so frustrated by all the things that they were teaching me because there were things I knew, either I felt like I knew already or felt like put me in the scenario, I'll learn it faster. Or like I just felt frustrated by the process and I hated all of the classes. So I kind of turned my life upside down in the midst of like a hardcore panic attack, and fully switched gears to an English degree, went abroad, like completely changed my trajectory. And I like I said, having a panic attack. I was terrified of expectations not being met in my family and for myself, and not going where I was supposed to be going, not taking the expected route. Like when we talk about my struggles to being where I am, that was probably like the pinnacle of like learning to trust myself and my instincts and my desires for what I'm spending my time on. Because from that point on, my grades were straight A's. My attention to my work was vastly improved. I was way happier. Um, I didn't go to law school like I said I was going to, but I got through the degree and ended up working at a job that I had found through a friend of a friend, and like that's kind of where I what I've mentioned earlier is that I'm good at networking. St. Louis is a small community. It teaches you to network kind of intrinsically from the get go, and being a kind of an interactive sort, always in the service industry, like I said before. I liked to talk to people, and I was good at talking to people, and I was good at keeping connections alive to use that. So my first job out of college was the friend of a guy who I was serving in college, and he just so happened to be in my fraternity. And then from there, I got into my next job because he taught me about wine, and I got into the service or the collection industry. So it was literally I laughed that at this point of owning my business and having worked professionally since college, I've never once used a resume.
Well, I think I really want to dig into that because, there's so many different ways that people are creating, a life and earning income and creating income in all kinds of ways, whether it be online or, on Upwork or Fiverr, or they're consulting, just a million different ways. And so you got that first job from a contact, and you're working in.
I was in the wine industry at that point.
The wine
It
industry.
was a wine bar in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wine bar. So did that job require a degree?
No.
Didn't require a degree.
No.
I mean, so the people that you're working with could have been whatever background. They wanted to work. They were good enough at the job.
Yeah.
So you went from, I mean, whatever you want to call that job in terms of the requirements. Like you didn't have to have a degree or a master's.
No.
At that level, to fast forward the clock, however many years.
Well, I guess the hardship there, I guess I'm wired to not register. Like I've always advanced because my work ethic is keep your head down, churn, keep a smile on your face, be the hardest worker and the happiest face, and like it's just helps. Before long I was the general manager of the wine shop, and being noticed by this guy who wanted to hire me to travel the country doing wine cellar consulting work because I intrinsically try to strive. And I think some people might find that really difficult and really tiring. I find it naturally occurring, and so that was beneficial for me and very lucky for just to have that innately. And so it wasn't pure dumb luck. It was hard work, but being in the right positions to see the next opportunity kind of thing too.
So, like, I guess I'll give you an example of something that I'll relate it to from my own personal journey. So there was a job that I did in college. So I was at WashU. I was going to night school, playing baseball, and I was working in a frozen foods distributor, and literally in a freezer with a cold suit on and a hat and gloves and whatever. And you got paid a bonus for how fast you worked and this and that. And so like I was in good shape. I was doing this and that. So I was literally running this job. I would work from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to like 1 o'clock in the morning, in the summers and in breaks or whatever. So like I started making good money. Like base was like $12 an hour, and you can make up to like $6 an hour. And this is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So for a kid, 19, $20 an hour is good money. And this is people's regular job. This is not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I was hustling because I wanted to be able to do well. I wanted to be able to also make money for the pay for college. But like at the end of the day, there are some people that they were just clocking and clocking out. They were okay with $13 an hour, $14 an hour, but they're missing out on an opportunity, right? So the person that's starting that job, whatever job in that same level, making whatever wage, that not where they could be in a year or two.
Yeah,
it's an opportunity. If you do it well, you bust your ass. You're setting yourself up for the next opportunity. Someone can notice you and whatever.
Yeah. And
if you're just getting by, you're gonna be left behind. And so, and that's why I really want to dig into that, because it doesn't matter where you are. You can't change the past, but you can change the future with your work ethic, like you said, your desire, like you mentioned. And so, okay, so civil life.
So it was I was at 33.
That's right. 33.
I started taking the wine tests, started building my base of knowledge because I got into that job at the nicest wine bar in the city. and I knew zilch about wine at all. And so I had to hit the ground running and taking classes and learning as much as I could. I like working full time in a wine bar without knowing much of anything. Um, so I had to fast track that, and before long, found myself in front of an offer that I actually kind of pushed off for about a year to go into doing the work that I currently do with another firm, and um, because it just didn't feel right. I was at this point I was starting to feel a bit more comfortable with the idea of like if of trusting my instincts, trusting my gut. It took me, I think it was until my late 20s, early 30s where I really could solidly tell when I should and shouldn't take a step. Um, but I got into that job and
So we got into which job?
doing the seller consulting work with another firm, doing similar work that I'm doing now with a different firm.
Okay, so the seller consulting work at that point in time, was that a side thing or a full time?
That was my full time job that I went from this 33 into that side, that seller work company. And
Okay. What year was that?
That would have been beginning of 07, and I worked with them until 2013, middle of 13.
Okay, and you'd already gotten your sommelier.
Had already taken the one of 4 sommelier tests, but with 33. And that's where like it was time needed to be spent on studying for that. It was the most I'd ever studied, I think, in my life on something. But I was interested in it. I was passionate about it. I really I enjoyed then and still do today. I enjoy the industry. It's a very cool and dynamic and ever changing universe of information. It is new every single year. So that was a lot of fun for me to learn about. So I when an even more solid full-time job and daytime hours, not weekends, with travel and all these perks came up, I was super excited about it. And it was a really cool learning opportunity of like one getting to all of a sudden at the age of whatever I was 24 or so, drinking like the best wine in history, not only of the current time, but like any time, and without really knowing what I was like getting myself into. And all of a sudden there's billionaires that are taking my advice on like wine purchasing, and like they're making market moves by buying hundreds of cases to just like own an asset that they can then turn around and like and put back into the market once it's depleted. And that, so it was like,
can you just take 1 second and give an example of like a vintage or type of work? Give us an example.
So the 2005 Bordeaux came out when I was in this job, and at that time, '05 Bordeaux was like seen as like the be all end all vintage. It was the best vintage in history, and it was going to be this big thing, and everybody was going crazy about '05 Bordeaux. And so there were I knew guys who would buy 250 cases of like 10 different wines just to have as a portfolio enhancing item, where they could then once it skyrockets, they can dump it onto the market, make a bunch of money, and do it the next time another vintage comes up.
Bordeaux at that moment in time when it was coming out, they were buying it for how much a case or how much a bottle?
Ranges as in any market, but the things that made sense to buy in that quantity would probably have been in the $500 to $1,000 bottle range. So these guys are dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on these things, if not millions. A very small number of people doing this, but those were the kind of clientele that we were talking to, and it was a wild trip for a sub 30-year-old, in my mind, dummy, talking to these guys who are major international players in not just the wine industry, but their own industries, like banking industries in New York and the real estate industries in Miami and the entertainment industry in Hollywood. It was like we were all over the place. It was a wild ride. And it got me those connection points that I have been able to kind of retain now that I had left that business. Kind of took another hard step. I figured out after about 7 years that I needed to step away from the industry for a minute, just to you get sucked into that super high end world where you see all these fun and nice things, and before too terribly long, all of a sudden you think you can live in those comfortable and fun and funny, nice things. And I needed to kind of take a reality check, step back, and I took a massive pay step backwards, but a massive quality of life step forwards, which allowed me to get happiness back into my life, to recenter my priorities. And that allowed me to have the kind of the personal perspective to know where a healthy place the wine industry could be in my life, and was what led me to opening my own company, because I could do it on my own terms. I could work with the people I wanted to work with, and that's been a beauty of owning my own businesses. I get to dictate the the vibe of the company, the trajectory of growth, the interaction style with clientele. Whenever I was working for somebody else, I was constantly trying to mimic how ownership would do something, trying to do it the way that they would want it done. And I was constantly frustrated because it wouldn't have been the way that I would have done it. And that internal like struggle told me, I knew when I took the job at Civil Life after moving out of the industry, um, that I probably had to become my own boss, because I was constantly beating my head against the wall, trying to perfectly emulate the ownership style and not my own. And it was incredibly uncomfortable
Because
for
you
me.
would do it more
Just
efficiently,
in
just a
my
different
own way. In my own way, yeah. It's like playing. I found myself trying to play the owner, the role of the owner, or what the owner would do. So it was a constant guessing game of how would they do this? What would they do? How do I make this the way that they would want it to be done, instead of just doing it the way that I know it could be done and well and fine. I knew that I needed to be my own boss, because I could be happier ultimately in having that kind of control. I mean, hell, most people who start businesses, it's probably a lot about the control aspect of like being able to do the thing you want to do the way you want to do it.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper on just the process of starting the business and that kind of arc. But I don't know if I did this before, but where can the listeners find you at online?
So my website is tendedsellers.com. That's the name of my business. Like you tend a garden, tended cellar. Cellar being a wine cellar, CELLAR. So
Thank you for spelling that.
My website's there. I'm on Instagram at Tended Cellars, and my LinkedIn is my name, Jay Mooney 00. My personal Instagram is Jay Mooney 00 as well.
Cool.
And so yeah, I mean that's the way to reach out to me. And yeah, like with my business, doing these kinds of things is it's key, because referral or personal connection is how the fine wine business runs. It's the engine on which it runs, meaning like it's all about knowing a wine guy, or I've got a wine guy to refer. Nobody is cold calling, a wine collection service for 5,000 bottle collection. They want somebody who's already using them to tell them that this guy's good, kind of a thing. So my business is fully run on word of mouth.
So being good, like what does it actually mean in your industry? Being good at what exactly?
Attention to detail is huge, because when you're working with inventory numbers, you could be one wine wrong could mean a difference of thousands of dollars in a collection's value. And if their insurance coverage isn't up to date and they have a fire or a flood or whatever the case may be, a total loss, that those kinds of mistakes can cost tens of not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So attention to detail, knowing the wine industry in general as well, like constantly reading, constantly being up to date on what's happening, knowing where the market is moving, knowing when to offload certain aspects of your collection because they're churning in the secondary market. So knowledge, attention to detail, and then just personability. I mean, I found a huge boost to my company of simply caring about the client rather than about the invoice. Um, I would prefer to have a long-term client that I have years and years ahead of me with, instead of trying to maximize a single invoice and a single exchange. So even if that costs me a few bucks here and there in the short term, I'd rather have a lifetime client out of it. And it's a relational thing for me. Because I couldn't work with certain clients in my past, it taught me that I didn't have to with my own business. Like it for me, it's more about a comfort level for myself, for my client, for all that kind of things than it is about maximizing every single dollar coming into the door. That's my own approach. because it affords me a much higher level of like personal, uh, I guess, revenue.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
looking at it long term.
mhm.
Yeah. So I I want to be able to dig deeper on the process, but then
Mhm.
before I go backwards in time. So you've been doing this full time for how long
Since
again?
the beginning of the pandemic.
So, okay, so now we're 2022 going on
Yeah.
23. So we're almost
Well, that's in the third year.
the third full year.
Mhm.
So what's the biggest hurdle right now that you have to overcome to get to the next goal? And what is your next goal?
Well, it's always good to build a book. So it's you always want a solid rotation of new clientele coming in the door because some people might quit drinking and want to liquidate their cellar, or somebody might just lose interest and get rid of the collection because it's worth more than their interest level is at. So for me, the biggest struggle now is simply just building a fuller book. Um, and that just simply means trying to maximize the contacts that I already have, meaning like knowing them all knowing that any contacts they've got, I'm all ears kind of an idea. And that it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's kind of a hard sell that I don't terribly enjoy, but it's the way that like my business keeps going is if my clients know that I'm hungry for any new business that comes their
Yeah,
way
and advocating for
for
they're
myself.
taking care of it. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
So
Goals go where I'm going. That's it. I mean, just building a book by trying to get five new sizable clients a year is good growth because they're potentially once I've got an inventory done, they become maintenance clients and buying clients. And then once we know what your seller looks like, then we can start massaging the inventory and getting rid of some things or getting new things. Then the relationship starts from that piece. So those adding those new clientele is a big goal.
what kind of distribution would you say through geography are your
Nationwide.
clientele?
So I've got work I've done in Phoenix, Arizona. I've done work in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. Um, there's some people in Louisiana that I've worked with. So yeah, I'll go anywhere. It's a uh, it's a valuable commodity. So when people see the value of having full visibility on what could potentially be, a $500,000 value sitting in a room in your basement or offsite in storage or whatever the case may be, then the idea of taking proper care of it becomes a little bit more functional.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it, it's not a it's not a cheap industry because the items are very very invaluable. They can be some priceless, some things just
Yeah.
you can't replace, kind of thing.
So if I'm somebody out there and I don't know much about wine, let's say I drink Lambrusco. No offense to anybody who drinks Lambrusco.
I
Right?
drink Lambrusco.
Okay, fair enough. But if you want to get into where you are, which may be zero, into learning more about wine and trying something and appreciating it, like my own personal journey, I didn't know anything about wine, so I got into some jobs coming out of college, working at the 33 Wine Bar with you, and then also the melting wine. So I had to learn about it. So the more I learned about it, the more I enjoyed it, right? So what kind of advice would you give to somebody that wanted to take the first step and learn more about wine?
Yeah, and in the very beginning stages of wine, especially from what my perspective, it's one drink wine. uh, that's the easiest and most enjoyable aspect of what I do, and learning about it is just drinking it. But the difference being drink with intention, meaning read about what it is you're drinking, put words to the flavors that you're tasting, because ultimately a beginning wine drinker effectively has zero vocabulary for how to describe what it is they're drinking. And being able to put words to the flavor profile is what's going to help you identify things from different regions and different flavor profiles and different ages. So it really is about drinking regularly, but with intention. Even if that means taking notes, so be it. If that means drinking with an open wine book, so be it. But just like trying to get data for any time that you're drinking.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't drink for joy and then forget about all that from time to time either. But
Right.
still,
So, in this time, inflation's high, cost of living is high. So some people are cutting back on a lot of things. So somebody may be out there looking for, a lower end, less expensive type of wine. Does something come to your mind that is less expensive, that's good, decent, and then you'd be able to also then take some of the flavors off the top of your brain and actually put words to them?
One of the easiest places that I've found to start was New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh snap! It's one of my favorites. Okay, a little Kim Crawford.
And the reason that they're easy is because the flavor profiles of that wine are very distinct. Meaning, if you drink a bottle of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, you're definitely going to taste grapefruit.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely going to taste like fresh, like mowed grass. Like those two flavors are very prominent in that wine, and it was a revelation for me. It was a bottle of, oh, I wish I could remember the name of the winery, but I remember it was a silver cap screw top. But it blew my mind that grapes had made these flavors that tasted like grapefruit and grass. That blew me away. And it was then that I was like, oh, okay, so I have to dissect what is going on in this thing and look at things beyond, oh, it tastes grapey. Like putting more words to that gives you a vocabulary to start describing and start remembering and start identifying. That's ultimately what it is. It's just building a vocabulary. As far as like finding things that are inexpensive and functional to drink, my first kind of push is to put them into a local wine shop, because everyone's taste is different. I could suggest something that I think is delicious to somebody and they may hate it. So like I always hesitate to give a recommendation of somebody says, I want a good bottle of wine. I'm like, well, every bottle of wine is good in some respect, somehow. Even a bottle of Yellowtail is good for somebody somehow. And and they all have their use and their function kind of idea. But I tell people, go to a local wine shop and meet the guy. Explain to him.
Or girl. Or anybody else.
Yes, right. Meet the person. You're right, the salesperson. And have a conversation with them. Tell them what you like. Have them suggest some things in your price range for you to take home, to explore, to investigate, and bring back information to them. Because the more information you give them, the better options you're going to get back. Good in, good out.
And as we're talking about this, like I mentioned to you previously, like, the wine Bible that you had me read in like 2005.
Yeah.
I remember reading, something about, because I love Sauvignon Blanc, right, from New Zealand. That's one of my favorites. I'll go get that any day. And then, I'm not a sweet wine drinker, but I do like kind of that tart, taut, Riesling. And I'll say it's in France. And I remember reading about the region and the mountains and why the climate makes the grapes more, potent in terms of flavor. I don't know. I'm making this up.
No, it's true. Rieslings from all of us are richer and bigger than the Germans.
But like, I get excited about it because, once I learned that, I had an appreciation for it. So when I see, and I'll say it's, Gewürztraminer,
you've got background.
And then I can enjoy it better and understand it better. And that's what a lot of this stuff all comes down to, whether it be food or wine. And so as I'm talking about this, I'm getting excited about it. I think you're getting excited about talking about
I don't know why I didn't bring a bottle of wine today.
We should have. Damn. I'm a big basketball guy. So JJ Redick, I think, out there has a podcast about wine and brings people on and drinks wine. But anyway, you're in business with your passion. And like going back and
figuring out a way to monetize that's right. That's the thing. Like I find myself to have been lucky to have found a passion. I fell into this passion, very few people in St. Louis get into wine because they want to get into the wine industry. A lot of it's just like, I was working in a restaurant, I learned about wine, and then I was in a wine bar, and I learned more about wine. Like it's almost always an accident in a market like St. Louis.
Yeah.
Cali, New York, all those bigger markets, they probably do it intentionally. But it's an easy industry to fall in love with. You're paid to drink well. I mean, that who's going to argue with that? So the hard thing for everybody is that it's not going to be wine for everyone, but there is something there for everyone that they really love, and it's a matter of just figuring out a way. Is this monetizable?
Right.
That's tough. Yeah, because not everything is.
Not everything.
You love basketball. You're not getting paid to play
I'm
basketball
not getting paid to play basketball.
or watch it.
I mean, I'll mop the floor so I can go see a game for free. I don't care. Hey, John Moran, if you're out there, I'll come clean your shoes. I'll lace your shoes, whatever.
And if you got a wine cellar, I'll help out with that.
Right. Right. Okay, so 2018, you started
Tenant cellars.
Tenant Sellers.
Yep.
So
Did that
what did you
part-time
do
for 2 years.
What did you do? What was the first? Okay, I'm gonna do this. How long were you thinking about it before you actually said, "Boom, I'm gonna start this LLC"?
An old client came to me and asked if I would come and do wine cellar like cleanup and maintenance work for him on the side, knowing I had a full-time job. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll just start an LLC. If I'm going to be doing this for cash on the side anyway, I might as well get the benefit of owning a business and the tax incentives at the time before the tax code was changed. And um, they and
So did you set up the LLC yourself?
set up the LLC. I have a much more intelligent person than myself doing the books for my company, who helps me with all the paperwork of setting up the federal like identification number, the state licensure, and like how to structure doing books. Because I know wine, I don't know QuickBooks or
Okay.
like tax code or anything like that. So
Okay.
it was for me, it was another instance of kind of utilizing the network of people I know who are better at what they do than I am at what they do. So finding, somebody who to help me set up that license.
So
help me set up-
LLC, license,
Mhm.
QuickBooks,
Well, Excel sheet, but
Excel sheet.
ultimately like
and then
the same
later.
deal.
Yeah. Okay.
And then yeah, that's it. I just kind of started doing that, keeping records for myself in an Excel sheet and sending my records off to my connection to do the books for me, at the end of the year. And so I took a really kind of casual approach to it because I was working full time in another job. This was just pure extra cash on the side.
Mhm.
Um, Fast forward 2 years and the world comes to a screeching halt. And at that point, like we were saying, I'm paid to sit on the couch, so I might as well keep myself busy with keeping this thing that I can control, whether it's running or not running. If within reason of going to people's homes, that's tough during a pandemic, but I could sell wine because everybody's stuck at home and wants to drink wine.
Mhm.
So I did a ton of brokerage during that time of finding wine at retailers across the country, shipping it to their home, to these people's homes, because everybody was looking to just expand their collections or get into their collections or whatever the case may be. So I just sat at home and just started tinkering away at making tended cellars a bit more structurally sound. That meant putting together a website. I had no idea how to do a website. So again, I tapped a friend. Thank you, Caitlin Franz, who was just very good at that kind of thing. She is very good at that kind of thing. And I'm not. So I wrote a bunch of copy. I gave her a bunch of photos and she gave me a beautiful website in exchange. And like, I am, I found myself maybe smart enough to know how dumb I am, I guess. It kind of a clunky way of saying like finding the people that I know who are better at things than I am to do things that I'm not strong in. I don't like beating my head against the wall at things that I know I'm bad at. So I'd rather use my network to help with that.
Totally.
It can be an uncomfortable thing for people. I don't find it to be all that comfortable myself. Maybe that's a drawback. I don't know.
Fair enough. Okay, so businesses, I think this year, I think a lot of industries are down a little bit, but was just tightening up of the economy. But you've got another side project that you're also doing.
Well, in any market, in any condition of the market, the wine industry is very well insulated because when there's a bunch of money in the market, people are buying a bunch of wine because they've got flush pockets. When there's a down market, people are offloading a bunch of wine because they want cash in their pocket. And those who are making money right now are sucking all of that up. So there's no bad cycle for the wine industry. It's made every single year, no matter whether the market's good or bad. So it's going to be there no matter what. So I'm benefiting. I am it's a good market to be in because there's always movement to be made in the wine market, especially on the secondary
Somebody
side.
buying at a discount, somebody selling at a
Yeah.
premium, so something along
Yeah.
something's going on. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, while everything was kind of downturned, had the opportunity of kind of brainstorming another way of using a piece of what my business was doing with, which was pairing wines for private events in people's homes because people were bubbles with their people and they would just do events in their homes with their close bubble. So I would pair wines with menus for private collectors, and a friend of mine and I were chatting about how he could expand his business as a private chef, and I had done a bunch of events with him as the wine pairing side of things, kind of independently, and we were sitting at a bar and right before a Cardinals game over a shot of tequila and just came up with this idea of like just putting ourselves into the place of hosting the events instead of realizing somebody else's vision for a private party. Maybe we'll start doing some things ourselves. And we had come up with this idea completely accidentally, seemingly at the perfect time when the pandemic was kind of calming down. I was on the way to a ball game, so obviously social distancing was starting to loosen. And we came up with this idea of these private dinner events that we immediately called my friend Caitlin, who helped me with my website. Caitlin, thank you very much again.
Hello, Caitlin.
And we, my friend Chris Bork and I and Caitlin started a pop-up dinner series called Place and Time, where each month we do 2 nights, 20 seats, and we do a revolving concept of a moment in food history, where we take a menu from, say, the first dinner was based on Ernest Hemingway's traveling novel, A Movable Feast, and we took food items from that book. And he spent his time in Paris in the 1920s and made a menu inspired by those items. And I pair the wine. Caitlin is an excellent bartender, and she sets kind of the scene, the vibe, and we change location every month and change concept every month. So it was a fun thing coming out of the pandemic. People were hungry for something to do, for experiences again, and we happened to be perfectly timed and adept at providing a really intensely cool experience. So yeah, we've been doing that for a year now, and it's been crazy. We've gotten wildly more popular than we ever anticipated. I mean, we're selling 2 months at a time, so 2 seatings of 20 a month, two months at a time, 80 seats. And they're selling out when we release them on Instagram in like 45 seconds. It is insane.
So you're doing that just in St. Louis?
Currently just in St. Louis. We'd love to travel. It's just a matter of finding those connections that people are willing to spend. Again, they're not cheap, so they're luckily a large overlap with my clientele. So
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think if we have our feelers out for long enough, we'll find it. So we all have full-time jobs outside of this thing, so nobody like needs place and time to make it. It's like it's just a fun thing for us to kind of flex our creative muscle, because we all are capable of it and really enjoy working together, and it's produced this really fun and kind of esoteric thing that if it goes on forever, great. If it goes on for another month, we had fun doing it too. So
love it. Where do we find that again?
So Place and Time is only on Instagram. It's @_place and time _ and I'm sure there's links that we can put on.
Yeah, we can definitely link links out there. Yeah.
But yeah, keep tuned to that Instagram page, and that's where we do all of our communication. We release tickets every 2 months, and if anybody nationwide is curious and having 3 bozos from St. Louis come out and fix you a fine dining meal with your perfect wine and cocktail pairings, we're happy to do it.
What's the last theme?
So last month, I should say, we did a theme based on the moment in Turkey in 1453, when Constantinople, of the capital of the Byzantine Empire, was overthrown by Mehmet II of the Ottoman Empire and turned the city from Constantinople into Istanbul. We picked that moment because one, I had just been on my honeymoon to Turkey, and I was super excited about revisiting all these flavors and things. And two, um, there was a really cool juxtaposition possible there of the kind of Mediterranean Roman influence of food, the seafood style, lighter Mediterranean style, counterbalanced with the more terrestrial, like Eastern European, Balkan area of cuisine moving kind of meshed together in this city. So it was, yeah, it was really cool kind of intermingling of Middle Eastern and Mediterranean, and we did all Balkan wine pairings with it, and set up a big old table full of lush velvets and deep reds and all the gold gilded things. It was neat. We're actually going a kind of a part from our standard model for December. We're doing our first kind of large format event. We're doing a New Year's Eve party actually, so tickets available, ready to go.
Available right now.
Available on our website right now through Eventbrite. Yeah. On our, sorry, the Instagram page.
Okay. Okay. And that's open to how many?
We have it open to 100 seats. We still have seats available. Well, not seats, it's tickets. It'll be a non-seated event for 100, and it's going to be a Salvador Dali inspired party, so a surrealist New Year's Eve party based on the dinner parties he and his friends would host in the 70s, called the Dinners de Gala. Dali's wife named Gala. And just wild tablescapes and weird like headdress masks and like surrealist painting like inspired dress, and we're gonna have some fun stuff. We got a geodesic dome with a fortune teller. We have undercover interpretive dancers that are posing as guests to just jump out of nowhere.
All right.
And food all night, drink all night. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a wild night. DJ, and it wild in that it's going to be, as we're going to try to make it as surreal looking as possible, but the food is going to be amazing. Chris is an amazing chef, Chris Bork. He went to school in culinary school in London, worked in London in kitchens for years, has opened and run some of the most exciting restaurants in St. Louis, and so I'm really lucky to have made that friendship to turned into a fun little side job in this place and time project. Yeah, Chris is an amazing chef. For anybody listening.
So you got more going on than I probably realized. So that's awesome.
And I'm a full-time dad.
Right. Yeah. How old is
my son Joey is 18 months this month. 18. And so yeah, because I've owned my own companies, I have the flexibility to also be the primary, well, at least half time caretaker between my wife and I. But yeah, that's the greatest thing about having the flexibility with my own business, is that I have the time to work when I can, and I have the time to spend all this time with Joey that I normally wouldn't have in a normal, job setting.
Cool. So those of you on audio or Audible or Apple, whatever, this may not happen for you guys, but I'm gonna have to grab a couple pictures of some of your events. I'm sure there's pictures out there, right?
Oh yeah,
that we can put on YouTube and have the end of this show have a couple images out there, so that way you can see an example.
And again, if you go to our Instagram page, Place and Time, we have images from all of our events up there as well, and they are stunning, man. It's been really cool. We had it's a different venue every time. It's whether a public venue or a private home or a backyard or something like that. It changes every month, so it's a different setting every time.
Where's the New Year's Eve one?
That'll be in South St. Louis, like Dutchtown area.
Okay.
Down near Carondelet Park.
Cool. Okay. So Joe, remind our listeners where they can find you on the websites.
So yeah, my website is tendedsellers.com. My Instagram is at tendedsellers. And that's TENDEDCELLARS. And all my contacts are on the website. If you get there, place and time is _place and time _ on Instagram. Again, I think we'll be able to put those links up in and I basically, like, what I like to do is remind my clientele that the wine drinking or collecting is meant to be enjoyable. And a lot of times when my time is necessary is when somebody's gotten overwhelmed with their collection. It's out of control. There's too much inventory for them to feel like they can tackle getting it back into place. or somebody wants to get in, it's too overwhelming to know where to start. I come in to just remind people this should be fun. Make sure it's fun, or else you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
So wine is meant to be enjoyable, not taken too terribly seriously. It's a big business, but it doesn't need to be taken too terribly seriously.
Is there any other piece of advice that you would give to somebody that wants to follow their passion or dream? Let's say you can figure out that it is, monetizable. And any advice you would give to somebody out there that's stuck?
Yeah, I have this, I guess it's a personal process where I sit with an idea until like you get that moment where it clicks, where like you can't talk yourself out of the idea making sense. Like I'll sit with an idea that doesn't feel right and mull over the things that are problematic for it, and eventually, if it's meant to happen, the things that are problematic for it will eventually solve themselves through spending time on the idea. Not everybody, I suppose, is prepared to trust their gut as much as I may have gotten myself to the point, but it is a matter of like finding an idea that you can't make not work. Meaning, like if you can't figure a way for it to fail if you do these certain things, or at least that it would always make you happy. That's the other thing. Like it's scary, but if you're miserable, God, man, that's a terrible place to be for potentially years. So that you probably spend more time thinking about the things that you want to do outside of it.
Right.
It's more impetus. I don't know. For me, it was a matter of just sticking with an idea until it made nothing but sense.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay. We're running out of time, but thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day coming on the show here. And we're gonna have to have you back on again and get some more updates with some of your businesses and ideas, and maybe come more prepared with some wine next time.
I don't know what I was
Holy
thinking.
crap. That's my fault.
Yeah, I thank you very much for having me on too.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.